Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me here today as we get to talk about one of my favorite subjects, comic books. My name is Jose. I love comic books. I love talking about them, and I love sharing them with you. Feel free to follow me on social media if you would like. Links are in the description below. I've also posted a link to the DC fan site that I have plot synopsis and character bios for these issues. So I have already completed the Jim Lee Wildcats 1 through 7. So we are going to do 8 through 13. Now, it is going to be just like the first video in which we're just really here to look at Jim Lee's art. We are not concentrating on the story at all. This is a really cool time. Now, Jim Lee sort of gets help. You can see that Jim Lee is the figure work is not quite his. I think Brett Booth is filling in, and some of these other studio people were out there. And unfortunately, when I was in high school, I guess I couldn't really tell. It's really Jim Lee-ish, and that's part of this studio system that these guys have. I think he's just providing layouts and someone else is providing the finishes, and Jim Lee ends up not basically, look at this arm. This has to be like a oh my goodness gracious. But it looks so cool, and I guess when you think of it, it just um it just kind of looks cool. So a lot of these guys, Todd McFarlane ends up not drawing. He has Greg Capullo. This is, by the way, a really um, cool drawing there. And like I said, I really do believe he's doing the layouts. So Todd McFarlane ends up not drawing, and Greg Capullo takes over. Mark Silvestri ends up not drawing, and he gets several people, David Finch and Michael Turner being the main two. Jim Lee gets Travis Charest on Wildcats, and I believe he gets, oh my goodness, Brett Booth on some of his other stuff. And the only I never thought that Jim Valentino really drew that much to begin with. So he sort of does other stuff. But the main guy, Eric Larson keeps drawing, and let me go back in here, double page spread here. And so Eric Larson draws, but that's about it. So all the main guys become studio heads and just are not able to continue. This is supposed to be Cyclops and Jean Grey. So they were even gonna say, could they be mutants? And so it took Jim Lee a long time to get some of these issues out too. It is an unfortunate byproduct when I'm gonna say this. I believe in capitalism. I think you should get all the money that you're worth, but there are unintended consequences to these guys becoming so successful, is that the fan in me just they don't really draw, and that is a shame when they really kind of stop drawing. So I don't know, it's just, I mean, it is what it is. And Jim Lee is still friggin' slow. He's over at DC, but the problem is that he has responsibilities, and that's, I think, what slows these guys down, is all the responsibilities that they also have to do on the day to day. So, all right. And so then we go, like I said, we are not really concentrating ourselves in the story here. And so, um, And Joe, you see Jim Lee's credited as the sole penciler, and Scott Williams is credited as the sole inker, but I don't know how true that is. It just, I don't know. So either that or Scott Williams is picking up more of the total finishing of the thing, because it just doesn't quite look um, the same. And you're gonna see, especially a nice double page spread. You're gonna see, especially in the final uh, three issues, that it really doesn't look like Jim Lee in a lot of places. So he's doing the best he can, and we are gonna continue. Like I said, we're gonna go through these here, and hopefully, finish his Wildcats, and I've already covered Jim Lee's Fantastic Four run. That just doesn't look like him. I have covered his Divine Right, the 12 issues that he did. And man, there's so much hatching. Jim Lee did. I know he was very heavily influenced on Barry Windsor Smith, and so was Mark Silvestri. And that is so. I mean, this hatchiness was just so different than what everybody else did at the time. It's just then eventually all the imitators came through. So anyway, as I mentioned, I have covered his. I will now have been covered his Wildcats run in its entirety. I will have already covered his Fantastic Four, his Divine Right, and I have not gotten to the X-Men yet. I'm actually covering X-Men an issue at a time, and we are. Oh man, that is a very cool. That is a very cool scene here. This panel. It's pretty simple, but just so friggin' cool here. Anyway, so I will be getting to his X-Men. I am right now just finishing the first Genoshan saga, so I just got done. I'm before Inferno, and hope to I'm doing about one X-Men book a week, because I'm trying to cover X Factor and Excalibur and everything, and I'm trying to get it all done in reading order. So I got a couple of playlists. So X-Men haven't gotten to, and his JLA run, he did, I believe, 9 of the first 12 issues. I will be covering that. And I'll actually be covering that issue by issue, because we'll actually be paying attention to the story. So I think we are now, this is Travis Charest. I believe that we are now in the Travis Charest portion. So, all right. These issues here are done by Chris Claremont, the last 4 issues. And Chris Claremont brings this character Huntsman in here, but he never really did anything with them. But I'm sure the door was open. And then he did the with Cyberforce. I am going to be covering these issues individually, or at least more in depth, these issues with Claremont writing. So these will show up again, but right now I am just doing and concentrating on Jim Lee. We will be doing a story with those and the ones on Cyberforce. So we will eventually get to these issues individual, or at least in one more longer um, longer video, more in depth of this story here. And yeah, so this is a Chris Claremont creation, this Huntsman, and then the main villain is also one of Claremont's. So pretty cool. When Alan Moore takes over, this is gonna go on a different direction, way different than what Jim Lee I think ever really probably thought. But man, Jim Lee's art is so it's so good. So yeah, that's why we're just covering his issues kind of, or his art. We definitely um I'm definitely a huge fan. So look at that reverse silhouette. So cool. I believe these are also Claremont creations. So you can already see this cover is not really his. That's not really him. I don't know whether he laid it out, but there's Wills Portacio and somebody else. But he is, here we go with the he is credited as the penciler, but I don't know. And there you can see some Mark Silvestri chin. Um, Man, that is so cool. High school me was eating this stuff up. Jim Lee is so good. I think that it's so cool. So that character tapestry is looks pretty cool. One of the things about Claremont is he writes some really good villains. Um, Definitely. One thing, the other thing I want to bring up is the legs. They go to the Art Adams School of Figure Work, and just like Arthur Adams' legs, Silvestri does the same thing. Legs are really really long. So look at that tapestry, very cool. Man, that is just so awesome. Jim Lee, I'm just, this is why his people just love his work. It's so cool. Um he is definitely just laying out. So that's supposed to be, I think, Chris Claremont or a Chris Claremontish type character here. There. Man, that is so cool. Jim Lee. I have looked, I don't think I have read these issues since I was in high school. But boy have I looked at them over and over and over. And of course, body and soul, a big trope of Claremont. So, all right, two issues to go. I think I have four copies of. I have the originals that I bought when I was a kid. I think I rebought them because I found them in dollar bins in conventions, so I ended up picking them up. And then I have a really nice, the nice version that we're using here that DC had released. So I actually have a lot of these, and I just love looking at these books. I also have them on the iPad. I draw and I use Jim Lee as a huge inspiration to get ideas on angles and just how how creative he is. Um I think Jim Lee, I think the perfect version of this art would be a hybrid between Jim Lee and Mark Silvestri with Todd McFarlane inks. Man, tell me that would not be pretty looking figures. I think Todd McFarlane should ink Jim Lee. Todd McFarlane is a better inker than he is a penciler. Look at that. I am soldier. So, like I said, high school me was eating this up. And just based on the amount of pages, you can tell Jim Lee did not draw all this. Zero way. He had to have a lot of help. And you can tell. Yeah, he's pulling, and then part of the other thing is that these books at a point were like coming out 4 times a month. So these unfortunately were not coming in monthly, but you know, c'est la vie, I guess. And so we have one more issue to go. Man, that is an awesome splash page here. That is cool. All right, final issue here. He does one more issue. Well, he does sporadic issues of Wildcats, but he does an issue of Savage Dragon. But that thing is so drawn by other people. It's really not even worth looking at. It is really, really, really layouts by Jim Lee. Although he's credited as penciler, you can tell that it is not really him. But then he bows out and he's just gonna run the studio, and why not? It's what he wanted. It's the success that they wanted, and so they had the success. But unfortunately, comic book fans were the losers because this beautiful art just wasn't gonna be there. And so this is a really freaking cool image. And so it is unfortunate, but such is life, as the saying goes. And we are heading toward the end of this. Like I said, I'm going to do a more in depth story or video on this story here. So who knows when, but within a few years, I'll get to it. And so, like I said, I haven't read these in forever. So, all right. And so, I believe we are almost there. And yep, there we are, Finn. So eventually James Robinson takes over Wildcats after this with Travis Charest. And I used to call him Charist when I was much younger. And then Alan Moore will take over with Charest. and it goes on a complete different idea than how Jim Lee ran it. But anyway, that's it. So, Wildcats 8 through 13. As I mentioned, we were only looking at the beautiful Jim Lee art. So, yeah, look for this story in the future. Like and subscribe. I do thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.